Hi, everyone. I am excited to be in this virtual room with my friend Geoffrey. Geoffrey, hello. It's good to see
Hi,
you.
Angela. Good to see you too.
Welcome to the Social Responsibility at Work podcast. My name is Angela Howard. I'm the CEO and founder of Call for Culture. And I think a lot of the topics that we bring to this podcast are like one step removed at
Mhm.
times, right? We're talking about concepts, themes, patterns, cultural events, things that are happening to other people. And so I'm actually really excited, Geoffrey, to be with you today because um, you have a story to share. You have a story to share about your personal experience when it comes to workforce diversity, equitable design, and how organizations can support life transitions, support the most marginalized um, within organizations. And so I'm excited to talk to you about this. And thank you for being here and sharing. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll kind of lead into your story.
Sure. Yeah, and thank you, obviously, for the opportunity and obviously for the transformational and life-changing work that you and your team do. I have the privilege of leading an inaugural function at Siemens Healthineers, which is focused on workforce development, and it's really focused on how do we build a future-ready, sustainable healthcare workforce. And it looks at everything and considers all aspects of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and also looks at culture, retention, recruitment, and how we really address it from K through 12, higher ed, and into the workforce and then beyond.
Hmm.
But by background, started in hospital administration, have served in higher education leadership, and have also done a lot of national level consulting work in this space as well. And so, really have been at the precipice of eds and meds my whole career, which has been a beautiful experience. But I think to your point, one of the things that's been interesting throughout my 16 years of work experience is, honestly, it's really within the last 2 years that I really fully started to discover and realize that I was hiding who I am. And I'll tell you, I remember the moment exactly. I was in an event in Denver, Colorado called, it was focused on the idea of how do we cover in the workplace? How do we
Hmm.
cover aspects of our hair? How do we cover aspects of our lifestyle? How do we cover aspects of our religion? How do we cover aspects of our family, our culture, you name it? And a dear friend of mine, Josh Miller, was one of the speakers there. And I almost felt like Josh was speaking at me. Now, mind you, Josh and I were in a
Hmm.
fellowship for several years prior to this. And Josh does a lot of work around this idea of covering. And I remember sitting there and
Hmm.
walking away after this event and thinking, wow, imagine if I'm a person who actually covers. Do I
Hmm.
cover who I am? Do I hide who I am? And, in my tenure, specifically at Siemens, I've wrestled with this because I'm out doing a lot of this work, talking with people, learning and growing and meeting some of the very best talented people. And in the last year, I really further wrestled with the fact that I needed to discover and accept, frankly, who I am. And I will tell you, I don't think I could have done it, particularly from a belonging and mattering perspective, if I wasn't in an organization where I felt not only would I be supported, but I would also be empowered. And I would
Hmm.
be lifted up in a way emotionally, uh, mentally, and even in some cases physically, that in ways that I would not have ever thought was possible. And so I applaud Siemens because in late 2024, I finally accepted that I'm a gay man. And this wasn't an easy process. As a father of three young children, as an individual that was in a marriage for many years,
Hmm.
certainly as somebody who was raised in an area that I don't think and didn't believe would have ever accepted me. And certainly when you go through a process like this, you think a lot about family, you think a lot about friends, and you also think about who's gonna accept me and who isn't going to accept me. But what I learned, honestly, um, to back to kind of your opening, was most importantly, I had to accept that, irregardless of what any of those cases would be, that if I didn't live authentically who I am, then frankly, what purpose did I have? And so
Mm.
when I really got down to the core of accepting that, I knew that I would be a better father. I would be a better son. I would be a better family member. I would be a better friend. And ultimately, through my life's work, I can hopefully help other people. And hopefully, I can help lift others up that could be in my very same shoes, but don't realize that it's possible.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing your story. And I remember the day that you and I were texting back and forth, and you had shared the news with me, and like my heart just was swelling. I was a little teary eyed because I knew that's what that meant for you, right? It was, you had the ability to live authentically, and you had made a discovery and realized um, who you were. And it's about values. It's about lifestyle, who you want to like. It's holistically a positive thing to celebrate. And so I know that I felt that way. You probably perhaps got mixed reactions based on your community, where you grew up, your family, your friend group. But I was most interested in how your organization also responded. And it sounds like they responded well. And so I would love to hear what that moment was like, why it was so important. What were some of the moments since you shared that news with your organization? What were some of the things that really made you feel like you mattered and you belonged, and kind of reaffirmed your connection and relationship with the organization?
Yeah. I'll tell you, so the first colleague I shared the news with is a colleague that I work very closely with. And when I shared the news with her, she looked at me and she said, "Geoffrey, I knew, but
Mm.
I wasn't going to say anything to you. But I want you to know that literally, if you need a room to stay in for as long as you need, if I can bring food over, whatever I can do to help you, I will literally drop whatever I have to support you." And she immediately then said to me, she said, "Are you going to tell our boss?" And I said, "Well,
Mm.
eventually." And she said, "No, no, like we're going to be with him in person. I want you to tell him in person." And I remember thinking, like, am I ready? Do I need to worry about this? And she's like, "Oh my gosh, no!" Like, and so when I told him, the first thing he did was hug me. Now he asked before he hugged me,
Mm.
but he said to me, "Can I give you a hug?" And he proceeded to let me know that not only was he proud that I was in this place at this time, but that he was also honored that I took the time to share it with him. And I will tell you that this is somebody who we certainly have our differences at times, respectfully, but I have seen him really genuinely care. Just even yesterday, when we had our one-on-one, he spent quality time asking me about self-care. Was I doing what I need to? He was
Mm.
encouraging me to think about different things that he, as a leader, would want me to think about. As I shared with you even before, I've even met with our global head of DEI, and she specifically asked
Mm-hmm.
me, "What has this experience been like for you?" She asked me, "Are there aspects of our organization that have not been supportive that I need to be made aware of so that I can bring it to the most highest leaders within our organization?" She told me that if I ever face any aspect of discrimination, she wants to be made aware of immediately. It was very encouraging from all those aspects, and even to other senior leaders that I've shared it with, they cared more about me personally than from a professional level. And what I mean by that is, many of them were like, "What are you doing to take care of you? Because this is going to be a big next life transition and change for you." And
Mm-hmm.
so all of them were caring very deeply and personally about what was I doing to take care of me? What was I doing to focus on me? Yes, also focusing on my children, but also in this process, I can't be a good dad and an effective one if I don't focus on me. And so they have been very, very caring. And I will tell you that that aspect is something I will never, ever forget. And I think the message for all organizations is if you really care about your people, then you've got to practice what you preach. And for me, having that sense of belonging and mattering, particularly in the workplace around these issues, I always describe it as a life and death situation. And I'll be honest here.
Mm.
I'm in therapy. And, look, therapy's good. And it was actually my employer early on in the process of me sharing this with my leader and other colleagues that said to me, one of the first things they said to me is, "Are you in therapy?" I wasn't at that time. And as somebody who
Mm.
preaches this, I was wrestling with it. Do I really need it? I'm okay. I'm going to make it through. And it was really my best friends in this world who said to me, "You need it." And then my employer saying to me, "Geoffrey, you have the benefits and we want you to do it during the workday. Don't worry about doing it on your own
Mm.
time. Do it during the workday. We want you to be well at work, because if you're well at work, you're well at home." And that message was important, and certainly had a huge impact for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's a few things. One, I mean, the term we have, if it's happening in the world, it's happening at work. If it's happening at home, it's happening at work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like these moments of transition, of life transition, of discovery, of the whole human coming into the workplace. I think this is something, I mean, you and I have talked about for years, and we preach about it. And the fact that you had a chance to actually experience this firsthand as someone who has been preaching this to organizations, but also you to now have this life experience that you could speak to. And I know one of the things we talked about before this conversation, before we clicked record, which could have been a whole nother second podcast, was this idea of your experience as a leader within the company, and you wondering if in organizations, people who are not in leadership would get the same treatment. Maybe not at Siemens specifically, but tell me a little bit about that and kind of how you've grappled with that conversation, because that is kind of a real privilege in this
Yeah.
discussion, and wondering, talking about the most marginalized, how do you think that may differ, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think throughout this experience, that has been certainly an important part that I have consistently thought about, because the reality of it is, to your point, is yes, I'm a leader within Siemens, but I'm also, certainly someone that's a recognized leader in this space. And, the reality of it is that I also am a white man. And so I come into this with a certain amount of privilege. Yes, I, have this important aspect of who I am. But I also have an aspect of privilege. And certainly I'm not coming into this with socioeconomic challenges, and I'm not coming into this with other aspects that others could be. And I think, to your point, this is where we really have to, at the core, make sure we have equitable policies, and equitable policies that not only lift people up, but also protect them. And,
Mm.
when I think about where we stand today, particularly in our world, and particularly in this nation, this is where, in my opinion, a corporation can really stand up. This is where an employer can really stand up and really prove that they care about their people. Ultimately, uh, all matters of DEI matter. And
Mm.
it's interesting to me to see people de emphasize and take away the reality. And here's the fact: to your point, yes, I have preached this, but now to have lived it, um, I kind of describe it as there's a lot more energy in this belly in ways than I've never had before. And
Mm.
I am more emboldened than ever to challenge my colleagues and other leaders, to literally say to them, this to me is as simple as this: do you have a heart, or don't you? Because this
Mm.
truly comes down to, do you care for people, or don't you? And to me, when you're a leader, you're responsible for your flock. That's your community. And if you don't care enough about making sure that you have the right culture, the right organization, the right place for everyone to thrive, for everyone to feel empowered, for everyone to feel listened to, heard, appreciated, then frankly, step down and get out of the way. Because what
Mm.
you're doing is not just ruining that organization, you are literally ruining people's lives. And for me, particularly when I think about this, if I wasn't, if I didn't have that type of organizational culture, it's very possible that I continue to be hiding who I am. And, we have to be frank and honest about the statistics here. Members of the LGBTQ plus population are significantly higher to have their lives ended because of these matters than others. And we have to be honest about that. And we have to ask ourselves, why is that? And we know the answers. It's because society, leaders, and organizations, and at times family members, unfortunately, friends, have decided to divide rather than love, have decided to chastise rather than lift up. And to me, when I think about these moments and I think about equitable design and I think about what we can do to make it a better community for all, it to me is simple. And I just hope that all leaders in this space, and again, I don't just say it's human resources responsibility. I'm going to say all C-suite, executives, senior leaders, middle managers, professionals, and all members of the workforce. We all have a responsibility, irregardless of title or rank or role, to create an equitable design. We all have a responsibility to speak with love. We all have a responsibility to choose to help other people. And when we don't, we have a responsibility to deal with that too. And so it's time for us to truly realize that and move forward.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned the macro environment that we are living in. And we're talking about equitable design, but we're also talking about, in this conversation, a specific population, which is being set aside, demonized, seen as less than, erased even. The LGBTQIA plus community right now, with the executive orders and the bills being passed and the communication in media about this community is quite frankly, it's disgusting. It's exclusive. It's eliminating the best parts of people.
Yeah.
And that's really scary for a lot of people. And I'm sure that's scary for you. And so tell me a little bit about how organizations can balance that, addressing the macro environment, but also, caring for their people internally while these tough conversations are happening.
Yeah. Look, to me, these are times where we have to really be willing to get into good trouble, as former Congressman John Lewis said. And I think organizations need to be willing to do what they need to do to encourage and empower and support their workforce, particularly at a very, very critical and crucial time where, to your point, so many people feel erased through disgusting policies and absolutely abhorrent practices. I don't know how anybody could sit behind a resolute desk of the White House and sign something so divisive and so hateful when we frankly are to lift up all Americans. That's not something President George W. Bush did. That's not something President Ronald Reagan even did in many cases. These are really interesting times. And to me, the organizations need to be the ones to help, because obviously it's not going to happen, unfortunately, at that level. But I'll also challenge the church, because the Jesus that I know believes in love. And so the question I have for anyone in all aspects of faith, regardless of where they sit, regardless of their faith background, is why are you choosing to allow hate to dominate versus love? And if you are, which unfortunately many are today, I would ask you to spend some time in your reflective prayer and ask yourself if that's the Jesus that you love and know, because it is not the Jesus that I love and know. And so I believe the hypocrisy of so much of the church has also created so much division and hate at a time where people further feel so ignored and so not heard. And so if I were saying to any organizational leader right now, where we know mental health was already a crisis in the workplace, it is only going to get worse where we stand today. And so I would be investing even more significantly in all aspects of those services. I would be making sure you have peer support specialists at all levels to support the workforce. And I would be making sure that you have created a mechanism to make sure people absolutely feel safe and that they know there's
Mm.
somebody they can talk to, because it's very possible there's no one for them to talk to at home either. It's very possible they're being ignored at home or ignored in their community. And when I look at what all of us can do too, when I hear these hateful messages coming, regardless of where they're coming from, I reach out to my friends and my peers that may be in these different communities, and I just ask them, like, hey, what can I do? Is there things that I
Mm.
can do to help you? We're going to have to do this critical work, and our hearts are going to be heavy. But I guess the question that all of us need to ask is, living up to the values of our civil rights leaders, we knew this work was not ever going to go away. Now's the time to get moving. And we're going to have to march, and we're going to have to organize, and we're going to have to make sure we do
Mm.
our part, because literally lives are on the line.
Wow. Yeah, it is a call to action, isn't it? And I am just so very grateful for you. I'm so grateful that you're here, that you're sharing your story. And I know that there's going to be people who listen, and I know this is not the last time you're going to share your story, because I am seeing you on stages and rooms and at marches, at like all the things. And I'm your biggest fan, and I'm so appreciative of your vulnerability, for your bravery to speak up for people as you're going through this moment yourself. And I know you're the type of person who's going to speak up for people who aren't leaders within organizations, who are in other marginalized communities, who can't necessarily speak up or don't have that privilege. So I'm very happy to know you. And I guess I'd end with a question, which is going to kind of get me emotional, so it might get you emotional. What would you tell? How old is your oldest son?
Corbin is 10.
10. What would you tell your 10-year-old
Mm.
self?
Mm. It's such a powerful question, particularly on this topic, because when I shared this news with my mother and my stepdad, and then also with my stepmom, as many know, I lost my father to sudden cardiac arrest several years ago. It was very powerful to have heard each of them first acknowledge that the first thing I heard from the three of them was we will always love you. And there is nothing that you could ever tell us that would ever take that away. The second was, what do you need from us? And the third was, we always knew, which was really a
Mm.
powerful element. Now, the reason I'm sharing that is that I always was fearful that my father wouldn't have accepted me if I reached finally fully accepting this part of me. My stepmom said to me, Geoffrey, your father absolutely not only knew, but he would have accepted you. And so if I would go back and tell my 10-year-old self, I would tell my 10-year-old self that each of us have a life to live with purpose, with passion. But the most important thing that we can do is to accept who we truly are and be willing to trailblaze not only this world, but every community we're in and every state we're in with that same purpose and passion. And that we have to not live a life fearful of perfection and fearful of criticism, but live a life authentically for who we are. Because in doing so, we will be the best of who we really are. And I will tell
Mm.
you that yes, this has not been an easy journey, but I know that I'm in the best place than I've ever been, mentally, physically, emotionally. And I know that as this journey continues, I absolutely will continue to be. And what I would also finally, in closing, tell my 10-year-old self is that in these moments, or actually in all moments, frankly, you will learn who your real tribe and your community are. And you will know
Hmm.
that they love you and adore you for who you are. And those that hear me say that know who they are. And if it wasn't for them, I don't know if I would be sitting here. Uh, I don't know.
Hmm.
But what I know is that they lifted me up when I needed to be lifted up. And when I think about our young 10-year-olds, particularly my son and all of our children, all these young individuals, this is a really tough time to be a young child, to see and
Hmm.
experience what's happening. But we need to remind them that this is not who America is. This is not the United States of America that so many of us know. We've got a lot of work to do to make this a better, brighter future for them. And I'm going to do my part.
Well, on that note, love you, friend.
You
Happy
too.
to be a part of your community. Thank you for spending the time with me as always. And thank you for being a voice.
Thank you very much, too.